Yes.
Get ready to take control of your own financial destiny. It's time to build your dream business. Welcome to the Empowered Entrepreneur.
This just got exciting.
With your host, Spider Graham. Your education starts now.
Hello and welcome to the broadcast. This is Spider Graham, and I'd like to welcome you back to what I think is one of the most important conversations that we can have about success in business and in life, and that is around the concept of persistence. Now, I know it may sound pretty obvious to think, hey, of course you have to be persistent if you're going to be successful. But the problem with the whole concept of persistence is it's a lot easier to sit there when you're comfortable and happy to think, yeah, keep going, and much harder when you're feeling defeated and beaten up and life is really treating you poorly to think, yeah, I should keep doing more of this because it hurts so good. But the reality of persistence is that if you do quit, you're done. You can't accomplish your set goals if you stop reaching for them. And so this is a simple concept, but it's also something we need to keep in mind as we go forward, because guess what? You're going to have bad days. You're going to have plenty of days of self-doubt. You're going to have days when it seems like the world is just out to get you. We won't sound paranoid here, but there are days when you just feel like you're getting beaten up on a regular basis. Client's not happy, something going on in your personal life, things aren't coming together, and there are times when you really want to have yourself a little pity party. The reality of persistence, however, the reality of accomplishing anything is, guess what? It's not going to be all hearts and roses. It just doesn't happen that way. So this is fine. We understand going into this, if we understand that things are going to be challenging to us from time to time, you know what? It's a little easier if we set our expectations. And by the way, I talk about this in the podcast on setting expectations. It's something to be able to think about as we're going forward of, hey, you know what? I understand I'm going to have some days that are going to be tough and are going to challenge me not only emotionally, but financially, maybe even physically. There are a lot of things I'm going to have to deal with. But when we stick with things, if we understand that not everything is going to be smooth and beautiful and look like it did when we wrote it in our marketing plan or our business plan or what our daydreams look like, then we have an opportunity to really get behind it and learn by the challenges that life offers us. One of my favorite quotes in the entire world is a quote by Winston Churchill, and it very simply says, never, 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 never give up. And the beauty of this statement is that he went through some very difficult times in his tenure as Britain's prime minister. Of course, he was, dealing with a city that was getting bombed almost every single day, and it's going to be a huge challenge. Of course, if they had just said, "Okay, we give up. We don't want to do this anymore. Please stop bombing us," the whole outcome of the Second World War may have been completely different. But Winston Churchill was in a position where he didn't have a lot of choice. He had to stick with what he was doing. They had to push on. They had to make it work. And yes, it hurt. And yes, there were losses. But in the end, they were able to get over the challenges that life and the war was giving to Britain at that time. Now, obviously, in real life, when hopefully we don't have to deal with the impending mortality being bombed in the middle of the night. But the challenges, of course, that we're going to face are we're going to be put in positions where we feel uncomfortable and where we feel defeated. We're going to be sad. We're going to be emotionally bereft from time to time. It happens. Our expectations and what actually happens are sometimes two completely different places, and it messes with us. It's not a fun place to be. But if we throw in the towel, then we're in a situation where we're never going to accomplish those goals. And we can lie to ourselves. We can say, well, it was never going to happen anyway. Well, of course it wasn't going to happen anyway if you give up. But the reality of persistence is that you have to look at it as a long-term struggle and goal. The idea that, okay, I'm going to roll out my business, I'm going to run a little bit of advertising, the money's going to start flowing in rapidly, and I'm going to have huge piles of it sitting around my living room is pretty much a nice dream, but it's a dream. So instead say, okay, this is my goal, and every time I take 2 steps forward, I'm probably going to get knocked back a step. All right, it's going to be a tough slog through mud. That's what it's going to be like. And if I expect that, all right, I'm ready for that, and we can work with the parameters and the expectations therein. So I'm saying part of what makes persistence work for us is the expectation that things don't always go as smoothly as we might want them to go. And that's life, and that's reality. But on the other side of it, we have to stop giving ourselves permission to give up. Now, I'm a runner. I became an avid runner later in my life. And so one of the things I do for fun, if we can call it that some days, is I run 5K races. Now, I'm not running these races to win. I'm not running them to win in my age class or anybody else's age class half the time. What I'm generally doing is I'm trying to compete against myself. And I know what my good times are for a 5K run, and I'm trying to beat those times. I'm trying to make sure that I can give myself a little bit to aim for, benchmark that I can constantly keep working to surpass. So it's a fun goal for me. But the reality of running a 5K race, which is just a little over 3 miles, is that it's not always easy. Now, if I constantly ran 5 miles every day, 3 miles would probably be much easier. I don't. I work my way into it. And there are some challenges for the physical aspects of running 3 miles. And there are some emotional and mental challenges with running 3 miles as well. And what I will find oftentimes when I'm out in the middle of a race is I'll find myself getting tired. I'm either very winded or I have a cramp in my side or something that's getting in the way of me really enjoying the process. And I'll start to bargain with myself. And I'll start looking for a place where I can give myself permission to maybe just walk for a minute. All I need is a minute. And I'll look ahead and I'll say, hey, there's a telephone pole. And when I get to that telephone pole, I can stop and I can walk for a minute and then I'll run from that point on. I can do that. And the challenge with doing that sometimes, physically, is that if you do give yourself permission to stop and you walk, you don't necessarily start back up in a minute. Well, you know what? 90 seconds. Let me walk for 90 seconds. I still need to get my breath back. And then your legs are stiffening up and you find it's really hard to get started again running, and it kind of messes things up. And the few times that I've given myself permission, said I'm way too tired to keep going, I didn't do well on my time. And actually, I noticed that my time was okay, but had I just kept running, I would have beaten my best time. And so that's very disappointing when you get to the finish line saying, if I hadn't stopped and walked for that minute, even if there was a minute, I would have beaten my best time. So I'm cognizant of that. I got this feedback loop that tells me, hey, you really wanted to go and beat your best time, but you kind of gave up. You gave yourself permission not to reach for your goals, and that didn't work out for you. Now, there's another aspect of running and persistence that I want to share with you from almost a metaphorical standpoint, and that is the reality of running a race is that when you start the race, you have a fair amount of energy. You're doing well. You're feeling good. You get pace going. You get your breathing down. You're feeling good. But after time goes on and you're further down the line in the race, you're tired. You're feeling winded. Maybe you're thirsty. Maybe you're hot. Whatever it is, there's something that's really getting in the way of the process being smooth and comfortable. Guess what? That's the way life is. But here's the other reality. Every step you take, you understand that you're getting closer to the finish line. And every step you take, you're getting closer to reaching your goals. However, every step you take, you're getting more and more tired and more thirsty and more hot, whatever it is. So the challenge that you have is that you know the finish line is coming up. You know all you need to do is keep going to get in there and beat your time. But you're also finding yourself bargaining against yourself. So understand that you're going to get tired. You're going to be challenged the closer you get to the finish line. And that's the way life works as well. As we get there, as we get closer and closer, it's going to be tougher and tougher. But eventually, by sticking with it and not giving ourselves permission to give up, we have an opportunity to really achieve what we set out to achieve. There's a great story in history that talks about Cortez when he was basically trying to take over what is today Mexico. And the Spaniards had pulled into the shores, and they unloaded the ships, and then Cortez ordered the ships to be burned. And the reason he ordered the ships to be burned is he wanted to set a very clear example to his soldiers that there was no retreat. There was only one way forward. You either went forward and fought as hard as you could, or you died. There was no retreat. There was no getting in the ship and leaving and going back home if things didn't work out. There was only one possible outcome, and as history shows us, Cortez was victorious. Everybody wants to be Cortez, but nobody wants to burn the ships. And I think it's incredibly important that you also understand when you set out to accomplish anything, burn the ships. Don't give yourself permission to give up. Don't have a plan B. Don't have something you can fall back on and say, well, if this doesn't work out, I can always go get a day job. Or, well, this isn't really very comfortable. I'm not having a lot of fun. Maybe I'll work on something else for a while. If what you want is meaningful, and if what you're striving for is important enough to you, then stick with it. And remind yourself every time you're having a bad day that you also have good days. And remind yourself when you're going through tough times that someday you're going to look back on all of this and you may just laugh. Anyway, that's all I have today to share with you. Thanks again so much for your time. Stick with it, my friends. Life is good. Things are going on. By the way, come to join us at spidergram.com. Lots of great conversations, lots of great resources, lots of things that we can learn and share from one another. Look forward to seeing you there. And hey, have a fantastic day.
For more free resources and advice for entrepreneurs, visit spidergram.com and become a subscriber today.